Can we please have quiet on the set?
I think you're good. We are recording. All right.
What's up, Brewskis? This is Adam Obesis Rodriguez in with another episode of the One Beer and Podcast, joined by Honorable Marco Dupa.
What up?
You may notice we're doing this a little differently. If you're on YouTube, you can actually see us again.
I know, right?
Yeah.
This isn't the way that we wanted to reintroduce our faces.
I forgot my... Oh, God, I forgot.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
I worked on it.
Very good.
Do you want to explain why we're doing this, Marco?
Yes. Yes. I'll try not to cough on the computer.
Thank you.
I have shit. This is how a lot of people are wearing it. I tested positive. I don't know how.
For being a thick boy?
Dude, I've been testing positive for Thick Boy Nation since day one. But no, yeah, I went in, got the thing. They drove the spike up my nose, touched my brain a little bit, came back with the corona, man. Couldn't believe it. Actually, I kind of could believe it. And we'll go in at length and really bore you guys with the details next week. But we didn't want to spend all of this week talking about that. We wanted to entertain you guys, so we decided that we're going to do a one reel in this week.
Mm-hmm.
Obi,
what a one reel in we have for you. This one is directed by an auteur, I would call him. Highly divisive director. Doesn't make films, he makes joints. His name is Spike Lee. His latest is called The Five Bloods. Came out, just a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Actually, I have it pulled up here.
Clocks in at 2.5 hours. Centers around
June 12th.
June 12th. Centers around a group of friends who were in Vietnam. They come back years and years later, present day, to try to get gold treasure that they left on a battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of build-up for this because not only is it a Spike Lee movie, but it's coming out on Netflix, which means tons of people watching, and that's basically the only way we get entertainment nowadays. It's by streaming.
Yeah.
So I came into it, I don't know about you, but I came into it really looking forward to it and having high hopes for a living. How did you enter watching The Five Bloods?
Yeah, I was anticipating it because the Black Klansman came out 2017, 2018. And that got a lot of good reviews. And I just recently watched that, and so I understand why it got the good reviews now.
Yep, good movie.
And so I was anticipating it because I was like, okay, Spike is back. He's making some like good shit. And the budget, I mean, it was like a $45 million budget on Netflix with some high profile actors. I mean, Chadwick Boseman being surprisingly not being the star.
No,
but like
he's not in it as much as you would think.
No. And not to say that I was disappointed by that because I like the way that they used him. Mm-hmm. But that definitely I could see it driving eyeballs.
Yeah, for sure.
So
anyway, so the there's a lot of plot going on in it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big ensemble cast,
mm-hmm.
Including Delroy Lindo, Jonathan Majors, Clark Peters, Norm Lewis, Isaiah Whitlock Jr., and a whole slew of others.
A lot of The Wire alumni.
Yes. Yeah.
And we even got a shit.
You need it. You need it. And also a wild Jean Reno out of nowhere.
Yeah. Dude, when he pops in, I'm like, wait, what? I didn't even know he was still working.
The Professional?
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's get into the plot. Like I said before, this elite unit in Vietnam, they are sent in to do something.
It is kind of unclear.
They're like
they're
clearing
there.
an area or something.
It seems like, from what I remember, they are there for that gold.
Okay.
And when they get there, they decide they're gonna lose it.
Right.
And then they like, the plan is to come back for it. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure like they're there for the gold.
The idea was essentially like, we're the people who are suffering and dying in this war. We deserve this money, not the government.
Right. And
from that.
And Spike spends he's lately doing this thing where he's like, this movie is what it is because of these things. And then he starts showing clips from like real life, events.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
actual like newsreel clips of
Yeah.
the atrocities of Vietnam.
Yeah, so he did that
really
in this.
Sets the tone heavy.
Yeah.
When you're first getting into it, and I don't feel like that follows through the rest of the movie.
Right. Yeah. It really devolves into more of a personal story with the Bloods than it does this overarching commentary on how America has treated African Americans for centuries, but more recently post Vietnam. They touch on it. Each character has kind of tells you how they're feeling about it, but I don't think he goes far enough in the way of this is why, this is the reason, or these are the repercussions of post Vietnam living as a black person.
Yeah, I feel like it. Generally that was the idea behind it. That these are the people suffering. These are the people that should get the spoils of this war. Not, it shouldn't go into the government. It shouldn't go into the leadership or funding more of the war itself.
Yeah.
But it just gets so lost in everything else it's trying to do at the same time.
Yeah.
I feel like it loses itself a bit in that process.
He's trying to say a lot with a lot of characters, a lot of moving parts, and it's not as concise as you want it to be. Why is Jean Reno in this? Why did we? I don't understand. Maybe I'm ignorant, but I don't understand the commentary on the French. I don't get it.
Well, the French took over Vietnam before America came in.
Okay.
They invaded in the past, and basically the same thing happened to them. They got ousted by the Vietnamese. So
yeah,
I think that was to touch on that, I guess, but they didn't do anything with it.
Yeah, he was just the bad guy.
Yeah, he had one throwaway line about that, like, "Oh well, you arrogant Americans, we were
was so French, dude.
It happened to us." It's like,
so
okay.
French. I wonder if he read what was written and was just like, really? I have to be these French? I will be these French.
To break out the beret.
Yeah, I just think it would probably have been more effective if the big bad was an American. Yeah.
Well, let's say spoiler alert first of all, because we're going to get into the all the
yeah. Hopefully, if you've been here before and you know how we do the one reel ends, these are spoiler casts. We can't hold back. It's an hour long.
No holds barred.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, back to the plot from what we can get through on it without needing a full synopsis. Basically, long story short, because I really want to get into our feelings on it even more. Essentially, these soldiers they're fighting, and Chadwick Boseman's character, what was it?
He was Norm.
Storm and Norman.
Storm and Norm.
Right. So he's essentially their like de facto leader within the squad, right? Like they look up to him. He seems like super well educated and like.
I don't think he's the de facto leader. I think he is the leader of their squad. Yeah.
Yeah. But he seems to be like, you know, big thought guy, definitely leadership role within their squad, and you know, he ends up getting killed in a firefight. They have that gold that ends up getting lost because the area gets bombed and like napalmed, so they can't tell where it is anymore. But they all agree to go back eventually to get Norm's body and to get the gold.
Right.
So years pass. We're to modern day now. All the surviving squad people meet up in Ho Chi Minh City. Catch up. One of the guys apparently knocked up a prostitute because you have to have that.
You have to have it.
Story about Vietnam.
Yep.
Was that supposed to be a comedic beat, or was that supposed to be serious? Because I can't tell.
Yeah, the whole thing, the moment where he's all her and me and you and then
boy,
it was just like, how long are we going to spend on this?
we get it. We get it.
And then nothing comes of it.
No, you just have that moment at the end where they reunite.
Yeah,
like,
and
okay,
and,
cool.
and yeah, and it's like, okay, so what about his family in America? Who is his family in America? Does he have family in America? He must. I'm pretty sure he does. I'm pretty sure he does. I'm pretty sure they make reference to it. So it's like, what is the point of this? What are we gathering? What are we getting?
He's now willing to be a father for his half Vietnamese daughter.
And if they're still in contact, it doesn't make any fucking sense. Why did it take them so long to go back?
I don't know.
They're in their like 70s almost.
Yeah.
What, like, there was no way they were actually going to be able to make that trek in real life.
No.
I don't understand why it took them so long to go back. It's not like people were barred from going back until 2018.
Yeah. I think, and again, unless I missed the line somewhere in the movie, I don't think they ever explained that at all, and it should have at least been a throwaway line that
something.
You know, we've been waiting for this moment. We agreed to go on this date, or you know, I don't know, just some reasoning, because that's a big plot hole to me. Where it's like, why wait until you guys are that old?
All right, so I guess the idea is, I'm looking at the plot synopsis, and I guess the idea is a landslide exposed the tail of the plane, and so once they were able to see that, they could get the coordinates.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, sure,
yeah, that's enough. I'll take it.
I guess. It's
loose, but it's a reason, at least, you know.
It's enough. My thing is, if an entire plane is buried so shallow that all it needs is a landslide to expose almost the entire backside of the plane, I think that they could have. Well, maybe not. Maybe you're going in. You're going in blind. You're just like, maybe, I don't know. You would think
the benefit of the doubt.
you would think that somebody would write down their coordinates. You would think,
Right.
I don't know, maybe do you when you're out there, do you know your longitude and latitude, or are you just lost? No, there's no way,
Pull
because
out your
then
GPS.
they wouldn't have been able to make it back if they didn't know their coordinates. I mean, make it back from Vietnam when they were there in the 70s, or yeah, they wouldn't have been able to make it back if they didn't know their coordinates. They didn't know how to get back.
You would think they'd at least have an idea of their coordinates. I mean, they don't have like a cell phone to look at their GPS exact coordinates, but you can say we had the battle here in this area.
Yeah, and I think that would
around there.
I think that would have been enough to go back and just look around, because that's all they did. They just went back with fucking
metal detector.
Yeah, and then found all of them scattered all over the place. A bomb went off, and the gold only went from like 10 feet that way to 10 feet that way, and they found it all. Spoiler alert: they found all the gold. So stupid.
But anyway, so yeah, they end up going back. They have some brush ups along the way.
Yeah.
One of the Five Bloods is clearly suffering from PTSD. Paul, in their group,
played by Delroy Lindo.
Right.
And least we forget that he's also the lone Trump supporter.
Right.
So
interesting character dynamics he has with the rest of the squad.
He is Spike Lee's character that he's used to speak on multiple things at once. With one character, he's using to speak on multiple issues. Mm-hmm. He uses him as the, because I mean there are black Trump supporters, so sure. It's like that's not, and his juxtaposition with the rest of the group, because they all experience the same thing, and yet he came out of it with different, and they reveal why later. But yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah. So anyway, they're on their way. They make it to the area that, like, the drop-off point. They refuse the help of their guide.
Makes sense.
Yeah, sure. Earlier on, they run into some activists. What are they? What are they doing?
Yeah, they're
French and Americans.
Dude, it's such a... Listen, I respect Spike Lee, okay? I think that he's an incredible writer and director, and I don't want it to come across like I'm just gonna spend this whole episode hating on Spike Lee. But some of this stuff... Actually, I don't think he wrote it. I think he just directed it.
Okay.
Let me double check.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll double check.
Yeah, so he co-wrote it with like a couple of other guys: Danny Bilson, Paul DeMeo, and Kevin Wilmot. Mm-hmm. So I say that to say that their inclusion is strictly a plot device.
Oh,
they're
sure, 100%.
They're like an organization that is there to strictly diffuse landmines.
Right.
It's like love against landmines or some dumb shit like that. That's real. Like that's. Let me find this bullshit.
Lamb. It's lamb.
Lamb. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're there strictly to get rid of landmines, which is just a plot device that we'll find out later on.
Right. We should also mention that we have one younger member that joins, who is the son of, who was it?
Paul,
right.
Yeah. Delroy Lindo.
Right. Paul,
the Trump supporter.
Yes. And he's our one, I guess, younger view of this entire thing character.
Yeah, and Jonathan Majors is the guy that worked with Travis, or Travis worked with him,
Right.
and so we got like, bearing everything that he told us about him in mind, it kind of gave me a clearer view of like how he works and like how he approaches the role and stuff like that. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
Knowing more about him.
He plays a character named David. That's his name. As the son of Paul, and we both talked about it briefly when we first saw the movie. But I think he has probably the strongest performance in the entire thing.
Yeah.
Just in general, overall, like I believed a lot of his emotions throughout the entire thing, and it connected in a way that almost felt out of place in the movie that he was in.
Yeah.
But I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah. You want and you expect it to be Delroy Lindo doing a lot of the heavy lifting, seeing as he has the most internal conflict. And it's not. It's Jonathan Majors really, really kind of crushing it with everything that he's given. So.
For sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, they get to that spot. They eventually just start trekking it through Vietnam.
Yeah.
It's a little like Lord of the Rings. There's walking for a while. We have a few scenes that reflect the PTSD going on. Especially with Paul. And we kind of get caught up on all the characters a bit. We get a little bit of their backstory. All this stuff worked okay for me. I mean, it's all basically just backstory to get us to a place where we kind of understand and can identify each of them as individuals. Because again, it's a pretty big ensemble cast to follow for 2.5 hours. But I mean, most of that worked for me. We get enough information, and eventually they end up finding the gold. But the box that was in is broken, so they think it's all gone. But then they find a gold piece here, a gold piece there. They're all under the dirt, and it's because of the landslide and all this other stuff. But I don't know what that has to do with anything. Anywho, somebody steps on a landmine and blows up.
Dude. Dude. When he blew up, I had to almost pause the movie because it was such a left turn from everything else we had seen.
Again, it felt like it was in the wrong movie.
It is hyper violent.
Yeah.
It's so gory.
Yeah.
Like what happens to him. They cut back. Dude, they cut back to him, and I'm like, it made me ask the same question as you. Was like, was this supposed to be a comedic beat? Because it is hilarious how violent it is.
Right.
It's insane.
Well, when a lot of the rest of the movie is a lot of shit talking, it's a lot of, just kind of brotherly fighting. It's nothing. It's nothing that would lead you to think that we would get to this apex of extreme violence out of the blue.
Yeah.
And it doesn't do it in a way that I personally find effective. It does it in a way that kind of makes you laugh at it, because you're like, what?
Yeah.
Wow, really? Like that's it? I don't know. I just felt like it was jarring in a bad way, and it lines up with the movie that we thought we were getting when you open it with, like, I don't know, actual executions in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Like that feels more right for that tone. But then when a lot of the movie spent with comedic beats, whether they're intentional or not, I was just kind of like, okay, like I guess we're in this movie now.
Yeah, it's a very, again, Spike is he's trying to do a lot with what he's working with. You have you have on the surface a movie about these 5 guys reconnecting over a shared traumatic experience. Mm-hmm. But then you have this very subversive political commentary, and then you have a hyper violent war movie, and it's like it's a lot. It's
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say it's too much.
I would.
I just I appreciate the effort in trying to do all of those things with one story.
Yeah.
But it does feel like it's just like, dude, pick one or two. You can't have all of those in one movie.
Mhm.
That's why the movie's 2.5 hours long. You're just like you're trying to tell too much story.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll get to our impressions of it overall later, but I just feel like that led to it being a master of none. It's too much. It had its toe in too many things for it to really be effective at really anything that it was setting out for.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that happens, and then David ends up stepping on a mine too. After they, decide to walk away after that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Before we proceed, he steps on a landmine, right? And then they're just like, oh well, that has to be the only mine. So let's walk around as if that didn't just happen. Like, the first thing you do is go, all right, everyone stop. We need to use the metal detector and try to find these landmines. Right? That's the first thing you think once somebody in your party is blown to smithereens.
You would think.
But no, they're just like, we're gonna act like that didn't just happen, and then inevitably someone else, dude. And then how long they spend on trying to get him off that landmine was excruciating.
Yeah. Yep. But fortunately, our young people from Lamb show up to defuse the landmine.
And then they didn't even do that.
Right, I was gonna say they can't. So they just show up.
So it's like, so what was the point? What was the point of having this organization solely dedicated to doing the thing that we needed them to do, and then the way that we defuse the bomb is we don't.
We pull them off real fast.
It's like, so yeah, just a waste, just such a waste.
Yeah, so Paul ends up going with a technique that they learned apparently in the war that worked one time before.
Yeah,
and they just pull them.
They just snatch them off.
Yep.
Yeah,
and it works. It's
it's like a It's like a cartoon. He wraps them up and they'll just snatch him, and he just.
Yoink!
And I'll give them credit. They didn't make it look ridiculous. Like, they pulled him off, and he comes off the mine, and you're like, is this really going to work? And like, what are the logistics behind this? And I don't think it would work in real life, but who knows?
Myth busted.
What do I know? I've never been to Nam. Yeah, right. And then there's a heartwarming scene where you're like, wow, he actually does love his son. And then that's quickly annulled, and you realize he doesn't love his son. And then, oh wait, no, he does love his son. That was really getting old.
Yeah. Yeah. Paul ends up basically snapping and saying that, like, they was this when he was like, we got to kill everybody.
Yeah, just out of nowhere, he's like, all right, that's because
they can't know about the gold.
Yeah, so they can't know about the gold, so they tie everybody up after they've helped him save his son. He pulls a gun on them.
Yep.
Which, oh, by the way, the Vietnamese lady, the prostitute, gives one of the guys a gun. The guy that she had sex with, she had the kid with. She gives him a gun for what? No one knows. Just another plot device.
I think that was Otis.
He holds on to the gun, right? Doesn't tell anybody about the gun. But then when they find the gun, he's like, what's the big deal? Here, take it. I don't care. And it's like, then you should have said something the minute she gave you the gun.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense. If he doesn't give a shit, then why keep it a secret?
Why keep it a secret, right? There's no reason to if it doesn't matter.
So then they get all twisted up about that, and they give it to the PTSD suffering Trump supporter.
Right.
That's the guy that they give the gun to.
There's this whole like prescription drug abuse subplot too that he throws in there.
Yeah, and they make fun of him. They're like, "Oh, you on them opioids or some shit," and then his response is to throw away his medically prescribed painkillers.
Right. On his trek in Vietnam.
These guys are in their 60s to 70s. None of them can really walk that well. He has hip pain, knee pain, whatever, leg pain, and just a little roasting. And he's like, you know what? Fuck y'all. How about that? I don't need these pills. And then it turns out later that one of them has the same pills.
I know. I was confused. I was like, I thought he got rid of those. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. Those aren't his.
Yeah, no. The guy who has them is the junkie. And the other guy had them prescribed. Or I should say, we don't know because they don't explain if his are prescribed also.
Right.
Wild. It's Spike just trying to say so many things. And it's like, just make 2 movies, dude.
Yeah.
You can't talk about the opioid crisis, the way that African Americans were treated after the Vietnam War, PTSD, why there even exists black Trump supporters in the first. Like, you can't make a commentary on all of these things at once.
Yeah.
Because then it's just like, no, because then it's like you said, you're a master of none. It's all over the place. The plot is just like, all right, what character development is happening? I don't really understand what you're trying to say here. Like, we get it. Atrocities were committed. Whose side are we on? Mm-hmm. Who are we am I supposed to feel sorry for Mr. PTSD who like loses his fucking mind out there? And like, I mean, he murders people and like, I mean, and he puts everyone in danger. He effectively ruins the mission, and I'm supposed to feel sorry for him because he suffers from PTSD. Why is he the only one who suffers from PTSD? There's so many questions. I have so many questions.
Well, we're getting to that. We know why he suffers from PTSD in particular.
We know why he does, but they never, like, everyone else just comes back fine.
They're okay.
They're really fine. The way that they make it seem, it's like they're really fine.
Okay, yeah.
They saw horrible things, and they were fine with it.
Right. I mean, I think that's okay. I think that didn't bother me so much because that happens in real life too. Some people aren't as affected as others mentally.
Honestly, though, dude, I'm starting to believe that most people who you're starting to hear more and more stories about people who are fine, who aren't.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I'm starting to believe, and obviously I don't have the numbers to back this up or anything, but I'm starting to believe that the number of people who see things like that and go through things like that and don't have PTSD is way smaller than what we used to think by the way that those people act.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially going back to, I mean, Vietnam and before, PTSD wasn't even like a thing discussed. Like,
right.
It was only like if a guy cracked up, you're like, yeah, I mean, he freaked out. Whoops, you know, like.
Yeah. Well, I think that it would have been more effective if all of them were suffering from some form of it. Everyone was kind of, it was manifesting itself in different ways, as opposed to, because then it makes him look more isolated, and you kind of feel for him. It's like he's the only one who cares, it seems like,
who's really suffering right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they all miss Norm, and that's kind of their bonding factor, is that they all have this reverence for him and you know, want to honor him and bring him back home. But
they make a point to say that none of them were as close or miss him as much as Paul does. I mean, they literally say it in the movie. Like, no one was as close.
Yeah.
But then they don't even illustrate that, though. There's never a moment where like they're off to the side having a moment that lets you know like, oh yeah, these guys had a different understanding. They were on a different wavelength with each other than the rest of the group. Like there's no moment that makes you feel that or believe that. They just say it. And then
I think that is largely to do with the fact they didn't have time to show it.
They
dedicated that time for the things that ultimately don't matter.
Yeah. All right, where are we in the plot? Homie, it's blown up. They save David.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're tying everyone up, and they're trying to make their way back.
Right. So they eventually get to a point where they're headed off by these other Vietnamese people who saw them with the gold and are saying, essentially, this is our gold because this is our country.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Paul's the one who freaks out and starts shooting. And it becomes this giant shootout. And one of those attackers gets away. And I think that's when the guide comes back too, and is like, or they meet up with the guide.
No, the guide had come back before that. He was part of the shootout. He actually takes sides with them.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, the guide turns out to be like super altruistic and like very America friendly for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, especially after
because his
makes fun of him and
because his I think his like and I think his uncle or one of his family members was they were America friendly. I think they were like on the side of the Americans when they were there.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why he has this reverence for them. I don't know.
But then didn't they say like his uncle was North Vietnamese and they see him at the bar at the beginning?
Yeah, no, I think that they were saying that they were on the American side.
I don't think so. I think that's why Paul was freaking out too. He's like, I'm not gonna take this guy's drink. He may have killed some of our brothers.
I think he was just being like racist.
Oh, maybe. I think I remember it being that he was essentially the interpreter and guide was saying like, it split families apart. It was like a civil war.
Yeah,
outside of my family.
I do remember that. Yeah. I think you're right.
But anyway, so yeah, he takes sides with the Bloods.
The Bloods.
And, they have this big shootout. One of the guys gets away. Bet we won't see him again. So
we won't see him again.
Yeah. Okay. So after that, don't they untie?
Well, because they've killed one of the Lamb people gets killed. So at that point, and then they turn on Paul because Paul's losing his fucking mind. So they turn on him, and they untie the two white people. They're literally the only white people in the whole movie. And Jean Reno, and that's when they're like, we need to stick together and we need to figure this shit out. So they like start divvying up the gold, and Paul's losing his fucking mind. And again, he's going back and forth between, you're not my son, you are my son. I love you, boy.
Wrong kid died.
Then he finally has what I can only assume is a mental breakdown, and then just goes off into the fucking jungle, and no one goes after him.
Oh, he says that David is no longer his son.
Yeah,
and he betrayed him because he took the side of everyone else.
Yeah,
when he just wanted to kill everybody, essentially.
Yeah.
And so he runs off.
Yeah, listen, guys, listen. I want you to, if you haven't seen this movie, they went out there to find gold. They run into these Vietnamese, yada yada. We've kind of explained all that up to this point. They let him just walk off into the jungle to die. There's no other way that can end. He doesn't have any food. He has one canteen of water and an M16. He's walking off to die, and they let him. If my dad said what he said to him, obviously That would be devastating, and that would hurt, and blah blah blah. But I'm not gonna let my, at this point, 70-something-year-old dad walk off into the jungle to die.
He wanted to go. I don't know what you want me to do. He wanted to go.
I'm going behind him, and I'm chop blocking him.
Take him out the knees.
Yeah, and we're carrying him back. They had a car. They had a truck. You just chop block him, you knock him out. You know how movies do with the butt of the gun. Knock him out. He'll wake up in 30 minutes. Throw him in the back of the Jeep.
Tie him up.
Yeah. They had enough rope. You take it off the white people. You put it on him. You throw him in the back of the Jeep. That's it. No, They just let him walk off to have like an ayahuasca fever dream.
Yes. He goes on a spirit journey. It's great.
Yeah.
Which is essentially what happens. He walks off. He starts having these flashbacks of the attack in Norman and all these memories that are happening. And I think that's when we're revealed the twist and why Paul's so affected by Norman's death. And surprise, surprise, Paul accidentally killed Norman.
If you dude, the minute you start the movie, you see that one coming. God, you could see it coming from the fucking trailer.
Yep, I said, okay, I'm glad we got past that because I knew it was inevitable.
I was so sick of them pretending like it was anything else but that. I wish they would have just gotten. I wish that was something that we knew he was struggling with from the jump.
Yeah,
because I mean, it wasn't a good twist. It wasn't revealed in a clever way.
It brought nothing to the movie. If I think it
changed
would have been
nothing.
better. I think it would have been better if it was known for everybody that that's what happened. And we're dealing with everyone kind of beating around the bush and being like, listen, we know Paul's fucked up. Let's not, let's get kid gloves to him, let's be careful about him because we know what he's been through.
Right.
And then maybe like one of them snaps and is like, get over it, Paul. Like, we all survived that. We know it's not your fault, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
And
or even worse, a conflict with at least one of them who does blame him.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, maybe that's something seeping right underneath the surface.
Yeah.
The entire movie. And then finally it snaps and they have this big conflict. And he's like, you know what? You are the reason why he's dead.
Yeah.
I don't forgive you for that.
Right.
And that becomes a big, conflict between the Five Bloods.
Right.
But
because what we're left with in the actual movie is it's revealed and then he just forgives himself because he has a hallucination with Chadwick's character, Norm, where Norm forgives him. But Norm's dead, and so he's forgiving himself. Mm-hmm. But there's no catharsis because there's no reason for him to do this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's nothing in the movie that says there's no turning point that would lift this weight from his shoulders, right? Yeah. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's just a realization essentially that he had that it wasn't his fault.
But why? What nothing brings him to that point. He's been living with this nugget for 40 years, 50 years, right? So, 50 years. He's been living with this. And then he, I guess, because of the events prior to that, all of that is traumatic, but none of it is cathartic. None of it is it doesn't get us anywhere.
Yeah.
With him.
There wasn't I don't think there was a real thing that like ignited him to get to that point. There wasn't some inciting incident that was like, he had this discussion with one of his teammates or or even something that kind of redeemed him,
which brings us back to if they had done what you suggested, which is have them all know, and that be a plot device kind of bubbling at beneath the surface, because then at that point you could have some kind of confrontation where they tell him, we forgive you, it's not your fault, you have to stop blaming yourself, blah blah blah. Then he goes off into the woods and has this cathartic moment with this hallucination. But
Right.
we don't get that. We get him murdering people, saying horrible things to his son, then leaving the group, getting bit by a snake.
That's what did it. That was the catharsis.
There it is. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
the redemption snake.
Right. That's what they call him. The Vietnamese redemption snake.
I love it. That's why I call it something else. You know. Okay.
Yeah.
God, Vietnamese redemption snake.
It's good. So, okay. And and then, okay. So he's off in the woods. He's having his hallucination, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Vietnamese guerrillas, basically, they're back, and they're back on his trail.
Yep.
For some reason. Oh, I remember. They split off. One group went after the truck, and then another group, the group with the most evil gorilla, goes after Paul, right?
Mm-hmm.
They catch up to him. They make him dig his own grave while he sings Marvin Gaye. And then they rip him in half with gunfire.
Chop him in half with bullets. Yeah.
And he dies a bloody, violent, lonely death.
Yeah. I have to say, I didn't hate that scene.
I thought that it was a good way for him to go out. I just hate the build up to it. Everything that we just discussed leaves me empty when he dies.
Right. By itself, I think in a vacuum, that's a good scene. It's acted really well.
Mm-hmm.
I think Delroy Lindo did a good job with that. But yeah, I mean, it just doesn't have the impact that you need it to, based on the story that we're telling here.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, yeah, Delroy Lindo is he's doing his thing too. I mean, I know we give a lot of props to Jonathan Majors, but Delroy Lindo, with what he has to, what he is and his character and the conflict, and I mean, I just have to call a spade a spade. The weak screenplay that he's working with, he does his best with it.
Yeah, I think both him and Jonathan Majors both are the sort of shining pieces of this movie.
Yeah,
by far.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, he gets killed. We jump back to the rest of the group, who are at this temple that their guide tells them might be a good place to hide out, or at least have some cover. And basically from there we have just a giant action set piece, big shootout.
Yeah. So it's revealed that the Vietnamese guerrillas that killed Paul are working with
Jean Reno. Des Roche is his name. Des Roche.
It's also revealed that the Vietnamese prostitute is a good person, so she doesn't know anything about this subplot to steal the gold from them.
Yeah, there was another subplot that came up, like, oh, maybe she's inside this plot.
Yeah.
Turns out not to be true.
Turns out not to be true, so we can exonerate her very quickly. And then, yeah, there's just a long shootout between a bunch of senior citizens and a bunch of Vietnamese guerrillas who you could only assume are child soldiers that have been fighting their whole lives.
Yeah.
I mean, all of them are like really young, look to be early to mid 20s. I don't think they're losing that gunfight with a bunch of senior citizens. Let me just say that. I just don't think that that's happening.
And a lot of the main cast dies during that.
Yeah, pretty much the whole main cast.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, that climax did nothing for me. I was like,
no.
Okay, I guess we're checking the box for a big shootout. That's what we're doing right now. But in the end,
Mr. Shit, he dives on a grenade. Grenade! Just his fat body just. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
It's ridiculous.
Yes.
Oh man, and then just blood everywhere,
Yeah.
just
Oh, yeah.
leaking out of him.
Of course.
Yeah.
So, who survives? The two white people from Lamb, right?
Yeah, fat white guy and the
French woman.
The French woman.
Jonathan Majors.
Jonathan Majors.
David survives.
And the other guy from The Wire,
Yeah.
who was basically the voice of reason of the movie. He was
Clark
Otis.
Sanders.
Yeah.
He
He survives. He was basically our I would say he was our moral compass in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he survives. So it's pretty much just them. Everyone else bites it.
Yep.
Including Jean Reno.
Yes.
All of the Viet Cong. Yeah.
And then basically we're shot back to America and everything being fine for everyone who survived.
Yeah. So the gold,
It's
they get the
cleanup.
gold back.
That's it.
Yeah, so there's no international repercussions to having a shootout with a French diplomat, Vietnamese guerrillas, and these guys who claim to be tourists who actually went back to get gold bars that they stole from the American government in the 70s. No repercussions to any of that. They just make it back, and then they redistribute the wealth to everyone who deserved it. The Black Lives Matter movement. I think the NAACP gets a piece.
Yeah, I think they get some of the Lamb.
Yeah, they get some. The families from all the guys who died get some. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and then there's kind of jumping back. There's there's not a subplot, but like the revelation that one of the characters who paid for everything is actually broke.
Right.
He's the one who dies. He's the one who gets blown up by the. So his problems are taken care of. He dies.
Yeah. That's Norm Lewis as Eddie.
Yeah, Eddie. So Eddie dies. Eddie blows up. Right. So now the gold, coupled with, I can only assume, an incredible life insurance policy, take care of his family. They're set. Right. So that was probably the best thing that could have happened to him. Really,
that worked out better than anyone could have expected.
If somebody was going to step on a landmine, had to be him.
Eddie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we get a bow on everything, and it's all fine.
Mm-hmm. And that's that.
I'm left feeling hollow.
And sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was messing with the thing for my.
Okay, it looked like you were praying for a second.
No, because it's been on mute this whole time, but you've been able to hear me.
I haven't been able to hear you. I'm reading your lips.
Right? You're really good. What was I gonna say? Oh, there's no mention. Like David's character makes no mention of his dad. I mean, I guess there's like a pan of all the characters and stuff, and him with Norm, and we didn't even mention that instead of using younger actors or even de-aging technology,
I was going to get to that. Yeah.
What they did was, in every flashback scene, Chadwick Boseman played himself at his age of I don't know. I can only assume late 20s, early 30s.
Chadwick Boseman was playing himself in Vietnam.
Yeah, he's playing himself. Chadwick Boseman.
Hello, I'm Chadwick Boseman.
Chadwick Boseman. I'm in Vietnam. Now he's playing his proper age. No de-aging or anything for him.
Right.
And the rest of them were just them.
Yeah.
At their current ages, but they were playing themselves in the flashbacks, but with no de-aging technology or anything, just playing themselves. So it was like 4 really old dudes.
And Chadwick Boseman.
And I'll be honest, I still don't know why Spike did that.
I saw a note that was talking about, I guess, like fun facts about the movie, and one of them was about that, and said that it was a conscious decision.
I know, it had to be.
It was a conscious decision, apparently, because it was exactly what we had talked about off mic, which was he wanted it to be that these old men are thinking back on these memories and seeing themselves in those places,
Mm.
not their younger selves, but their selves as they are currently. Now, my argument to that is like I understand that thought process, but if you're an old man and you think of yourself, I mean I'm not an old man yet, uh, but I'd assume, because this is how I think about myself right now, is like if I think about a memory, I don't think of myself at my current age in that memory. I think of myself as a younger person in that
Right.
memory. I mean, especially the older I get, the more I have this internal clock that's like, oh, you stopped aging at like 19. You
Right.
know, that's who you are really deep down. You just
Yeah.
look older outside. You know, like that's I've heard from other people too. That's how they interpret themselves as they get older. It's not that you ever feel older, but you look in the mirror and you're an old man. You know,
Yeah.
so that logic
It
sort of
doesn't.
I get where he's coming from, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
No, that's an insane thing to think. That
Yeah.
these guys would picture themselves as they are currently when they reminisce about their times in Vietnam. That was at when they were at their most vital, their healthiest, their strongest. I mean, that they were in the
Yeah.
prime of their lives.
In
They're,
Vietnam,
they're,
it's great.
I mean, as far as their health is concerned,
Right.
yeah, I know that sounded.
We're
That
in
came
Vietnam thriving.
But no, I mean, from a health
Yeah.
perspective, they were in the prime of their lives. They're in their mid-20s, early 30s, and you're telling me that their memory of that is when they could barely hold the guns?
Right. And I think it would have made more sense, and I've seen this done in other movies before, is we have during like a firefight, we have suddenly those characters switch from being old men to being young men because that's how they're expecting, or that's how their perception is of themselves.
Yeah.
So you cut to them modern day, getting locked and loaded, shooting, getting in the shootout with these Vietnamese guerrillas, and it cuts and it's their younger selves,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what they're seeing.
Yeah.
That's what their perception is.
Like having a hidden cut where like maybe the camera pans behind the helicopter, comes back for a second, and they're young again.
Suddenly they're back in the war.
Yeah.
Like we're right back. And I think I know it's a lot of people to keep track of. It already is. I have enough trouble keeping track of every single character in this movie. But I still think it would have been better if they chose younger actors to play them in the war, and then have some defining factors of all these characters that we can point to. A tattoo. This guy has an ear piercing or something. Or this guy always has his hair like this. Some kind of defining thing other than their names and characteristics, essentially.
Yeah, I think I think that it's a cop out to for the explanation to be that like, yeah, this is how they saw themselves. That's bullshit. Spike doesn't see himself as an old man when he thinks about how he was in the 80s.
Right.
It's insane.
Yeah.
I really think it's just, you want to be he casted 4 very iconic black character actors.
Mm-hmm.
And he just wanted to use them more.
Yeah.
And so the way to do that is to say, well, this is how they're going to be in the flashbacks too, because this is how they visualize themselves. It just doesn't gel. That anyone would think back on their past and think about themselves currently while thinking about them, like while having a flashback, while being nostalgic. That's insane.
Yeah. Now, I did see this point on Twitter, which is a news source that we can trust. Somebody brought up the idea that Netflix gave a budget for de-aging for The Irishman, but didn't give a budget for de-aging for this movie. Like, it was a thing that, like, they didn't trust Spike Lee with that much money for the de-aging technology.
That makes more sense, because they're in the very end they do use de-aging technology as like a sight gag. In the very end, you see this picture of all of them, and they do a de-aging thing, and you're like, so, and that makes it even more confusing, because it's like, well, if you're going to do it in the end, why don't you just do it throughout the whole movie?
Yeah, I mean, budget is for sure a factor. I guarantee it.
Yeah, well, there's no way, and it's fucked up, because I mean, I would, if I'm gonna give Spike Lee a movie, if I'm Netflix and I'm saying, yeah, let's do a movie with Spike Lee, I'm gonna give him the same money I gave Martin Scorsese. I will, because if I've already decided that I want a Spike Lee joint as a Netflix exclusive, then I want it to be the best. I want another Do the Right Thing. I want an Inside Man. I want a really, really good movie. So I'm going to give him that money. I don't know why you would bring him in and then not give him the budget that you give Scorsese.
Well, my question is, did Do the Right Thing need a huge budget? It didn't.
Good point. It didn't, and he's worked with less and made better. So
made better. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying you don't afford him that. You don't afford him what he needs to fulfill his creative vision, but the material has to be there. It's not just about de-aging. It's about much more than that.
That's true.
I will die on a hill saying that The Irishman was a much better written movie.
Yeah, I don't think that's a very difficult hill to die on.
I'm gonna die on it anyway. I don't care. I'll jump on the landmine.
You don't have to.
Why not?
We'll de-age you back to 19 years old. That seems to be the prime of your life.
Perfect. No difference.
Yeah.
No difference.
No difference. Yeah, and I honestly, dude, the jury is still out on the de-aging technology anyway.
Yeah.
I really wish that movies. I hope. I mean, I guess you need to see it more and more, and they need to use it to get better at the technology. But right now, I'm not convinced by it.
No. I think it's way more effective when they at least pair it with good makeup. Like,
yeah.
Still, Okay, I'm not going to say it specifically like it's fact, but I remember, at least in my mind, that the de-aging technology that they used in, I think it was X2, was really good.
Yeah.
And I remember it holding up way better.
I think it's X3, but
okay, one of the X-Men movies.
Yeah.
they made Patrick Stewart look young.
Yeah.
And it was really effective. And I think they mostly did it with makeup.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at Benjamin Button. That's another one that, like, I mean, it looked good.
Yeah.
I mean, it helps to use it on a man as handsome as Brad Pitt that you can. I mean, his face is just easier to work with. You don't have to DH him that much. He already has a youthful look, so that helps. Trying to DH a Pacino is like, Jesus Christ. You're trying to iron out a leather that's been in a closet for 70 years.
Keep stretching this. But yeah, a more recent version of that would be like Chris Evans in what's it called? Not Endgame.
They had to DH him in that?
Or Infinity War. No, Endgame. Endgame was the last one.
Oh, when they had to do the scenes where they go back in time. Right?
They had to age him.
What do you mean?
I'm talking about just.
Oh, when they. Right. Gotcha. Oh, yeah, he looked incredible.
Yeah.
He looked super convincing.
It really worked for him.
Yeah.
And they could have just stuck a green face on him and tried their best to animate that, but
they didn't. Yeah, they put the extra effort in. As far as the makeup is concerned, yeah, I mean, there's no amount of technological de-aging. No amount of technological de-aging right now that's going to be leaps and bounds better than a really good makeup artist.
Yeah, and I think the key is both of those things working hand in hand. I think
Yeah.
if you, because there's only so much makeup can do, obviously.
Yeah.
So I think pairing those two together is the ticket. You can't just try to go George Lucas with it.
Yeah. Well, either way, they didn't fucking do it in The Five Bloods. So
no, they didn't. And speaking of computer graphics and effects, I think the budget showed specifically in like the gunfights and the choppers and all that stuff. It just didn't look very
didn't look good. Just didn't look good. Yeah. And that's the thing. He just shouldn't have that whole. I mean, the movie could have been a clean 2 hours, hour 45, if you just take out all of the war stuff.
Just show less. Just show less of it. Be more conservative with your shots. You don't have to show the helicopter spiraling down after getting hit. Like, we don't need that.
Yeah,
it's unnecessary.
We don't need a arrow. Oh, there's fireworks going off. Really? It's the first.
People were doing it yesterday too.
It's so annoying, dude.
Yeah.
And now the dog's gonna go off. We should probably wrap this up.
Okay.
She's gonna start fucking losing her fucking
Bring
mind.
her on camera. Everyone wants to see her.
Arrow.
Arrow.
Yeah, pretty girl.
So worried.
I know.
Okay, this isn't good podcast material.
Yeah,
okay, so we'll wrap up. So overall, I mean, my perspective of it, it was okay. I didn't hate it. I think there were some good shining performances in it. He definitely
has
the fences.
Adam, it has a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That is far too high.
It's one of his highest reviewed movies ever.
I don't know why. I don't know how.
Fucking insane.
But yeah, I don't think it's quite that.
No.
But what do you think?
I mean, I think it's ambitious, and I love everything that he tried to go for. I just wish that he just didn't do it all in one movie. Because everything that he was trying to do with it, I'm on board with. The commentary on how America's treated Vietnam vets, especially African Americans. The commentary on how Vietnam views Americans still. How we're viewed internationally.
Yeah.
Reparations. I mean, there were so many things that he tried to say in 2.5 hours. It's just not enough movie, dude. That's an epic. That needed to be a 3.5 hour movie to really drive home the point that he was trying to with every subplot. And just wasn't enough movie, and yet it felt like it was a 5 hour movie that didn't say anything.
Right.
So I thought it was okay. I'm not gonna watch it again. I can't see myself watching it again.
No, I don't think so either. That being said, how many bottle caps?
3.
That's what I was going to go with. I think it's a solid 3 bottle caps. I'd recommend if it looked interesting to you, give it a shot. I don't think it was bad. I think it, like you were saying, it was just too ambitious. Which is usually a good thing, but it ended with it not really saying. It said a lot of things not very well. Yeah.
So I would recommend watching it because you're going to get a lot of good acting. It's entertaining, and there is a lot of commentary that can get some very good conversations started. But don't look to Spike for any of the answers on those questions.
No. Look within.
Look within. Yeah. It's a good way to cap this baby off.
Get bit by a snake.
Get bit by the Vietnamese. What was it?
Oh no!
Should have wrote that one down.
Yes.
We'll get that one back. We'll get that one back. We got to go through the video.
We'll run the tapes.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been the One Real In podcast. I am Adam Obesis Rodriguez, joined by Marco Duba. If you have any movie ideas for us to review, please let us know. Drop it in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share, and give us a rating if you have time. Wish you do. We're all in quarantine. Come on, please. Thank you.
That's right.
I think we did it.
I think we got it.
All right.
Love you, brewskis. Bye.